So this is different. There is a several second interview between these. So you may always notice that Mr. Zhong Shi already hosted so many launch live coverage. You may heard the voice just after the liftoff, and one of the ground staff will report the actual liftoff time. Because you know that as the commander, the chief commander has already mentioned, they announced the ignition time, and there will be several seconds interval for the liftoff time. So another person will announce this liftoff time just after the launch. And for the question, you know that China adopted a mixed atmosphere on board the Tiangong space station, which means 20% of oxygen and 80% of nitrogen is quite similar, but very close to our ground. So the astronaut will be very convenient inside the station. But you know that in the EVA, it will be quite different. You know that the higher pressure is, the more rigid the spacesuit is. So if the difference between the inside and outside the EVA spacesuit is 1 atmosphere, it will be very, very rigid, and it will be impossible for the astronauts to move and change the shape of their bodies. So there is no exception that all space-capable nations choose the pure oxygen atmosphere inside their EVA spacesuit. So before that, we must have some adaptation procedure for the astronauts from their common daily life in our station to the EVA, because they will change from the mixed atmosphere to the pure oxygen atmosphere. And in the pure oxygen atmosphere, the inner pressure in the EVA spacesuit is only 30 to 40% of the common atmosphere. So for this change, we have a very critical procedure to remove all the nitrogen inside our body, because it will boiling if we change that very fast. That will be very, very dangerous.
And I guess we have time for a couple more. A viewer named Azul Celeste asks about the measures to deal with debris and pollution in the space. We covered this in our earlier discussions. I mean, there has been minor damage, very minor damage to the solar wings of the Tiangong space station. And part of the tasks for SN17 is that they will inspect some of that damage, not exactly to the point where they have to repair or fix that, but they will definitely take a look. Yeah. But what happens if that damage is a little bit more extensive, let's say, in a hypothesis situation?
You know that in the orbit for the space debris, there are hundreds of millions debris with a size less than 1 centimeter. So for this kind of debris, it's very difficult to track for tracking because it's too small. So we use the shield to protect the space station. But for bigger ones, for instance, for those larger than larger than 10 centimeter, usually if it collides with the station, that will be cause very serious damage. So for these bigger space debris, usually we will conduct an orbital maneuver to avoid the possible collision with this space debris. But if something wrong already happened, that will be depend. For instance, if one of our module is hit by the space debris and some leakage happened, these kind of things already happened in the Mir space station before. So even we will shut down the whole module and isolate it from the other modules. So these things do happen in the Mir space station before. And this is the most serious problem. And even in this case, we may require the astronaut to have an emergency escape from the station to go back to the Earth.
I mean, let's give time for one last question. Chris Lemba wants to know why they're called the taikonauts. Why Chinese astronauts are called taikonauts? I mean, don't Russian astronauts get their name also?
Of course, this comes from the culture. You see that usually in America they call them astronauts, but in Russia and the former Soviet Union they were called cosmonauts. So of course, in China, we have our own traditional, in Chinese name is taikonauts. Because the universe in different countries have different pronunciations. In the United States is the astro, and in Russia is cosmos. Well, in China is taikong. I believe that
is the outer space,
Yeah.
literally. So I think this is really also a contribution to the English dictionary or foreign language dictionary at large, with the taikonauts.
Yes.
I think they have taikonaut as a word in dictionary.
It's already.
Let's hear from the commander.
Okay, T minus 5 minutes and counting.
T minus 5 minutes. We're 5 minutes away from the ignition. Professor Liu, I do want to bring you here and talk a little bit about international cooperation, because China has invited astronauts from all over the world to cooperate and participate in its future space station missions, of course, through a selection process. I mean, what does that say about China's commitment for its manned space program to be open, to be cooperative, and to be inviting, where all of its fruits, if you will, all of its achievements will be shared with the international community? Professor Liu.
Well, first, China does really agree with the first treaty of the United Nations that we are not really claiming territorial space in the outer universe. And that has really received popularity on the value-based one. And of course, technically, because Chinese space is getting more reliable, and we can also see through generations of improvements. And we are really talking about the 3-bedroom and 2 sitting rooms of apartment in the outer space, so that can really accommodate the scientific research in a more
the stationary orbit, the energy required is also almost equal to that to a human lunar mission. So that will use a very huge launch vehicle, but it's really not necessary. Why to do that? There is no reason to do this.
I mean, it's an imaginary question. That's part of why we have space programs. They really broaden people's horizons and open their eyes to a bigger world. We are just over.
Oh, there are so many audience for the launch.
Absolutely. To the ignition time, everyone is watching with breath that is bated, including all three of us here in the studio.
You may notice that the service arms are still attached to the launch vehicle. So after we change the power supply from the ground to the internal batteries, we will detach the rotational arms. And also we mount some cameras on these arms. We can also monitor the whole procedure to ensure safety. Actually speaking, this belongs to the launch side system. And before this launch, all these things must be operated to check whether if everything, for instance, the motors for the rotating is okay.
T minus 1 minute. Do you think the Shenzhou 6, well, you mentioned the Shenzhou 16 crew could be watching all
Yes,
of this,
through
in
the
the space
video
station.
uploaded to the from the via the.
but they're not able to talk to them,
Tianlian.
right? They're not be able to give them just a pep talk to encourage them or anything like that.
That then what they will send to them.
Okay.
No, already launched all the detachment of the
Alright.
arms. holding.
Okay, the arms are detached.
Yeah.
Oh, you can see
30
as
seconds.
detached. In the station, they are watching.
Well, we just saw some banners. Welcome. 2 minutes, 20 seconds. Professor Liu is getting nervous. I can feel that. 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Ignition.
Commit, and we have a liftoff! Chinese sent a mission to tie off space station. 17 mission. Godspeed.
Over the past 2 decades, since China sent its first Taikonaut
青山
Yang Liwei to
SN17 雷
outer space
达
in
跟踪正常，
2003,
遥测信
there
号
have been
正常。
11 manned missions. This is the 12th mission, carrying the youngest ever Shenzhou crew since the
双场
construction
光学雷
of
达
China's
跟踪正
space
常。
station.
So this vehicle comes from the camera what I mentioned, mounted on the second stage of the rocket and looking backwards, so we can see the 2 boosters.
These cameras are so important. They bring us a real-time scenario, real-time monitoring of what is going on with the rocket to see its trajectory and to really visualize how that
Yeah,
flight
yeah,
is
yeah.
going. I think it's super
So
important.
I believe at this moment you can see the direction has already
Yeah,
changed. So the
that's
pitch
right.
over has already been successfully conducted, and the next critical step will be the jettisoning of the emergency escape tower.
And how much further into the flight will that happen? The jettisoning of the escape
Emergency
tower?
Escape tower. About 100 seconds also.
100 seconds. That's about a minute 40 seconds into the flight. We could see the separation, the jettisoning of the emergency escape
And
tower.
this, I believe at this moment, it's already supersonic and already past what we call the max Q, which means the maximum aerodynamic forces to the launch vehicle.
I mean, this is something the taikonauts would have experienced in their
Yeah.
training also.
Okay,
Yes, that's
jettisoned.
Okay, the escape tower has now been jettisoned.
And the next critical step will be the separation of the 4 boosters. About 2 minutes.
About 2 minutes into the
青山
flight, we will
USB
see
雷达跟踪正常
boosters，come
遥测信号
off.
正常。
We also heard voice that all the ground stations tracking very normally, either the optical
双场
telescopes and
光
the
学
radars.
雷达跟踪正常。
I love hearing them. I love hearing them report that everything is going on smoothly, normally. They have a very calming, very soothing voice.
Great.
The
Oh, no,
boosters
yeah.
have come off.
So,
4 boosters.
Good.
Oh, and also the first stage separated.
The first stage has been separated.
Yeah.
酒泉
We have a camera
第二级
on the rear part of the second stage to monitor the working of the main engine of the second stage. We have 1 main engine with a thrust about 80 tons, and also 4 vernier engines to change the attitude of the launch vehicle. So we can see the optical images based on the ground telescope. This is what I mentioned, the video from the camera mounted on the rear part of the second stage. We can see the big thrust is the main engine. And this is the engine mounted inside the payload fairing. So the next step will be the separation of the payload fairings.
The separation of the payload fairing will be
Great,
the
great.
next one.
yes, that's
Separated.
separation.
Okay.
Now it's in the sunlight. The astronauts inside the cabin can see the sunlight through the 2 windows.
I mean, some of their predecessors used to, play with pens once they reach zero gravity.
And
So
the
you can
next
see-
step, after several minutes, will be the shutdown of the main engine. But still, the 4 vernier engine will be still continue working to adjust it, to make sure that it's precise enough.
Yeah, I'm happy to see that the taikonauts are doing fine. They seem to be doing okay in their seats.
That's the Shenzhou 617 flying eastwards. Along its trajectory, we have the Weinan, exactly.
Yeah.
Weinan ground station in Shanxi province, and also we have the Taiyuan satellite launch center. We also have a ground station.
And so this stage will probably take a little bit longer.
Yeah, exactly. And also you can see the background is the horizon of the Earth, very bright. They're already outside the atmosphere.
I mean, all of these cameras, they withstand such high temperature. They work magic.
Well, that still there is a interval between the camera and the rocket engine, so it's not in a very high temperature, still very safe.
See a little black space from space here.
And you can see the small vernier engines just on the left. So that vernier engine is used to change the attitude of the this second
Got it.
stage.
Look at the Shenzhou 16 crew
The astronauts are
watching
their
from the
phones
space station.
as they do.
With the continuous working of the rocket engines, because the propellants are become less and less, and the acceleration will be greater and greater, so they will feel the G-forces acting to their body are increasing at this moment.
So this is what they're going through at this point in the flight.
Okay,
Being
Qingdao Station has already captured the flying object. Qingdao is the last ground station to track the combination.
I'll call it a day. Thank you for watching. This is more
Okay, so
Next
this is
Space.
the part where the taikonauts could feel a little bit more discomfort in their seats.
But it's